People rarely respect you when you start changing. They usually respect you after they realize the change didn't stop. In the beginning, improvement looks temporary to others. Someone starts waking up earlier, taking their work more seriously, spending less time in the same conversations, being more selective with where they put their energy. At first, people don't react with respect. They react with curiosity, sometimes amusement, sometimes quiet skepticism. A coworker says, "Let's see how long that lasts." A friend jokes about your new phase. A relative assumes you'll eventually return to the same patterns, because most people have seen temporary motivation before. They've watched people try discipline for a few weeks, then slowly drift back, so early change rarely earns respect. It usually earns observation. Think about the last time someone in your life suddenly started taking themselves more seriously. At first, people around them didn't change how they treated them. They just watched. You've seen this before. Be honest. You already know someone whose discipline surprised everyone after it lasted longer than expected. Here's the silent rule most people discover too late. Respect is rarely given to beginnings. It's given to consistency. Most people assume that once they start improving themselves, people around them will immediately notice. They expect recognition, encouragement, validation, but socially, that's not how respect forms. Human beings instinctively measure patterns over time. One disciplined week means nothing. One focused month still feels temporary. Even 6 months can look like a phase to people who have known you for years. Why? Because people's perception of you is built from long memory. If someone has known you for 10 years, their mental image of you isn't built on your last 30 days. It's built on thousands of past behaviors. Late mornings, missed opportunities, old habits, casual decisions. So when you change, people don't instantly update their perception. They wait, not always consciously, but quietly. They're observing whether this is a moment or a new identity. And that waiting period can feel uncomfortable. Because during that time, the external response you expected doesn't arrive. You improve your discipline, but people still treat you like your old self. You become more focused, but others still assume you'll lose momentum. You become more selective with your time, and some people interpret it as arrogance. This is the uncomfortable space between personal change and social recognition. Most people quit here, not because the change is difficult, but because the respect they expected hasn't appeared yet. So they slowly drift back toward the version of themselves everyone already understood. And that's exactly why the rule exists. Because respect is rarely based on intention, it's based on pattern durability. When people see a new behavior repeated long enough, something begins to shift. The jokes disappear, the skepticism fades. The quiet observation turns into a different kind of attention. People begin adjusting their expectations because they realize something important. This version of you didn't fade, it stayed. And when a pattern survives long enough, the social image surrounding a person begins to recalibrate. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Suddenly people trust your discipline. They assume you'll follow through. They take your words more seriously. Opportunities appear differently. Because the perception of your identity has changed. But here's the perspective shift most people misunderstand. Respect wasn't delayed because people doubted you personally. It was delayed because human perception requires time evidence. People don't trust sudden changes. They trust stable patterns. So respect doesn't arrive at the beginning of growth. It arrives when growth proves it isn't temporary. Once you understand this rule, something important changes in how you approach improvement. You stop expecting early recognition. You stop looking for external confirmation that your discipline matters. Because you understand the timeline of social perception. The first stage of change is invisible validation. Only you see the difference. The second stage is quiet observation. Others are watching, but they aren't convinced yet. The third stage is silent recalibration. People slowly adjust how they see you. Most people give up during stage 2. Because it feels like nothing is happening. But that quiet period is exactly where identity solidifies. This is why people who understand long-term growth become less interested in announcing their progress. They focus on maintaining patterns instead. Consistency becomes the message. Not explanation, not persuasion, just repetition. Over time, repetition becomes reputation. And reputation eventually becomes respect. Most people want respect when they begin changing. But the world doesn't reward beginnings, it watches them. And waits. Because real respect only appears after one quiet realization. This version of you isn't temporary. Save this. You'll understand it even more in a few years.